Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you really want to live in the body and mind you really want to be living in. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of food and body freedom, as well as find more meaning and more moments of joy in life, you are in the right place. Hi everyone, guess what? I have a lovely discount code just for you, my listeners. The code is 10 off, that's 10OFF, and it will get you 10% off any one of my online courses, which now include Mastering Mindful Eating, Overcome Binge Eating, Overeating, and Emotional Eating for Good. And I also have a course on When You Want to Stop the Weight Loss Medication, a comprehensive guide to weight maintenance and mastery. So if you've maybe lost some weight using a medication and you're now wanting to go off the medication but keep the weight off, this is the course for you. And any course you buy, you keep the course for a minimum of 3 years, maybe longer. It just depends on how many are purchased. All courses are self-paced, and I promise you they are practical, meaning they don't just tell you what you need to do. You actually engage in the skills and strategies needed to make actual lasting behavior change. You learn how to do the what. Okay, all courses have multiple modules with multiple lessons. All include lots of examples, tips, and tricks to make things simple and clear. And you also get lots of downloadable resources, including the daily planning template that I use with my own clients, the exact protocol to use after a binge or an overeat has occurred to minimize its damage on your body and your mind. There are protein cheat sheets, research-based journaling prompts, and the literal how-to checklists on the skill you are learning about. And with the weight maintenance course, you also have a movement module that will help you figure out how to make a movement plan that fits your particular lifestyle and level of fitness. And you also have a natural appetite regulation module. So whether if you have never tried an online course to change behavior, or if you have, I just highly would recommend that you try one of these. I've put my heart and soul into both of them. They are all research-based, and now you can get 10% off. So again, that code is 10OFF. If you're ready to make changes that last, you can go to my website, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from the main menu, click courses, and it will get you to where you want to go. Or you can click on the links in the episode description below the show. And again, as soon as you're there, when you're ready for checkout, just enter the code 10OFF, 10 off. And just a reminder, I also have an ebook cookbook that is now available. It's called Protein Forward Easy Recipes. It includes all high protein recipes, including breakfast and sweet treats full of protein and lunches and dinner. Okay, so again, head to my website. It's probably the easiest thing to do, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from there, go to courses or the cookbook. And again, use code 10 off at checkout. Hello, everyone. I have a very special guest today, Eric Hörst. He is a world-famous climber and trainer. He's a researcher and internationally renowned author of 8 books, which have sold more than 300,000 copies worldwide. He's been a pro coach for decades, founder of Physivantage Nutrition, and hosts the podcast Training for Climbing. We're going to get into a really interesting conversation, whether you're a climber or not, all about aging, well, all about optimizing aging. Take a listen. Let's maybe just have you start out by telling anyone here who maybe doesn't know who you are a little bit about you, your background.
Sure. Well, my name is Eric Hörst. It's got an umlaut over the O, so it said Hörst, whereas a lot of people say Horst if they don't understand.
Did I just say Horst? Because I know it's Hörst.
It's totally fine if you do. It doesn't offend me, but I'm a scientist and I'm into detail and trying to get things right. And so our family's carried on the Swiss German legacy, and so the umlaut, is still used, at least by my family, not necessarily my more distant relatives. But in any case, I'm more or less a lifelong climber. I was just saying to you, Heather, that I turned 60 on Wednesday, and it was actually right around my 13th birthday that I first went rock climbing. So, I
It's
mean, that,
crazy.
if you add it up, is what, 47 years that
It's
I've been
amazing.
involved in climbing. And it was a very different sport in the 70s, obviously, than it is
Hmm.
now with sport climbing and the Olympics. And so it's been a pretty wild journey to start back in the trad 70s and then to see the sport
No
grow
kidding.
and change and become so popular uh, and I'm very happy for that. There's a lot of old timers like myself that don't like the growth and popularity of climbing, but I know the life-changing potential that rock climbing, or let's say outdoor recreation of any
Yeah,
kind,
exactly.
getting away from the TV, away from the computer, away from your phone, hitting the trails, hitting
It's
the cliffs,
huge.
going to the mountains. It's life changing. People go out for recreation in those settings, and I kind of turn that around and say I think ultimately it's more about recreation, because
I love
when
that.
you're outside, there's, at least for me, a spiritual connection. You're kind of rejuvenated, and it's a great stress reliever. And so the rewards of that outdoor experience, and rock climbing in particular, is so profound that I think the more people around the world that climb, the better. It'll make the world a better place, because it does change people, I think, for the better, and it brings people together of
I
diverse
agree.
backgrounds. And when you're up on a cliff or sharing a rope with somebody, the other person's politics or religion doesn't really matter, because
So
you're
true.
you're you're bound by the rope. And
Yeah.
and I think you could say the same thing about two people out on a ski trip in the mountains or mountain biking together. You're kind of connected by that experience that transcends, uh, you know, everything back at home, or, the
Absolutely.
political environment that is so crazy and divisive.
Yes.
I love, for most people, climbing is an escape from that. A few people try to drag the politics and stuff in,
Always. Yeah.
which I think is unfortunate. But yeah, it's a pretty great journey, and I take my involvement in rock climbing in particular, but just in being very active, a
Hmm.
reason that mentally and physically I feel like I'm more like a 30 something, not someone
Yes.
who just turned 60.
Well, and you perform like you're that. So, yes.
Yeah, I try to climb at a high level. And getting back to kind of my backstory that you
Yeah.
asked me about, I'm a performance coach. I've been involved in training for climbing. I'm one of the very first people to try to tap into kind of a research basis for
Yeah.
formulating training programs and prescriptions. I started writing for the climbing magazines in the late 1980s. I wrote my first climbing book in, I think, 1992 it was published. And
I
there's
remember that book. That
yeah,
was
and there's
my
been
first
a
book. Yeah,
yeah, there's
that
been
I bought on training for climbing. Yes, yes.
yeah, well, I appreciate that. And there's been many since.
There
And
have.
the book Training for Climbing is on its third edition. It has, I
Mm.
think, 7 foreign translations. I just received in the
It's
mail a
amazing.
couple weeks ago. I received the Korean translation of Training for Climbing, which
So
was
cool,
pretty
Eric.
wild to
Yeah.
see. And So I've been really involved and able to have an impact on a global scale. When I go climbing in Europe,
Hmm.
people recognize me,
I
know
know. It's
right
so
away who
neat.
I am, because they've seen me on YouTube or they've read my books. And so to get that feedback and to hear the success stories and to know I played a small part in it is a wonderful thing. And and then I brought my family along for the ride. My kids
Yeah.
grew up as climbers. They're now, in their 20s, semi-pro climbers in college, and my wife and I still climb together. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I feel really lucky, very, very blessed.
Yes, yeah, it has been quite a life that you've led through all that climbing. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
training, the actual
Mm-hmm.
climbing that you do yourself, and yeah, like you said, it's really been. It is. Well, I see your social media stuff, so I know your family is
Mm-hmm.
heavily involved in the sport and all of that too. So it's kind of cool you've been able to
Right,
take them
and
along
then
for the
I guess
ride.
kind of the final step in my career that spanned all these decades, and I built this foundation as a training expert and a climbing researcher, and very, very published.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of building. I didn't know it at the time, but I was building a structure or a career out of it all. It wasn't formulated from the start to be that way, but I kind of one piece after another, and now 5 years ago, as you know, I founded
Yes.
Physivantage Nutrition, which is the first climbing specific uh, nutritional line of products, proteins and performance
Yep.
enhancing drink mixes and powders and supplements, things like that, that are evidence based, designed from scratch specifically for climbers. And so that's been my mission the last 5 years, is to bring that to climbers. And not everybody needs this stuff, but if you're one of those hard training climbers who's trying to do everything right in terms of training and resting and trying to eat a good whole food diet, if you're checking all those boxes, there's some gaps and deficiencies.
Absolutely.
Protein's a big one that many people don't consume enough to support their training and climbing habits. So having a good supplemental protein powder, whether it's collagen for joints and tendons or whey
Mm-hmm.
protein or plant protein for muscle recovery, it can be very, very helpful for somebody doing most everything else right. And
Absolutely.
I've been building this company from scratch up. It's fully bootstrapped operation,
Uh-huh.
like most entrepreneurs starting a business out of home. And now we have a warehouse down the road a couple
I know.
miles, and we started distribution in Europe, and so it's grown into not a big company, but it's growing into a
Yeah.
significant brand. And so while I'm turning 60, I don't envision a retirement anytime soon, Heather.
I'm sure not. No, no. Because that's kind of your main, I mean, that's really what you're doing, right? Is
That's what
running
I'm
that
doing. Yeah,
company, right? Yeah,
that's right.
you're not coaching anymore. You're not, yeah, yeah.
I take on a few clients every month, people that reach out to me, kind of um, very special cases, somebody coming back from an accident.
Mm-hmm.
I coach a few para climbers. I do coach a few
Oh,
pro climbers
cool.
who are like on Olympic tracks. So a few
Yeah.
special cases like that. I do still do coaching, but it's not my main thing. And same
Yeah.
thing, even with the writing, though I have another book in mind to write, I don't anticipate having the time to do that, because really I'm working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, developing this nutrition brand. It's hard work to start something from
Yeah.
scratch and build a big product line, and then to set up, sales and distribution and marketing, and be really smart with your limited financial resources, because we don't
You
have
bet.
venture capital or anything like that. It's all funded by myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's stressful. It's a lot of hard work, but it's really exciting because I know the products work. I use the products. My family uses
Yeah.
the products, and if we can get them into a customer's hands, to use the first time, they see that they taste great, they work. There's evidence behind them, and
Yeah.
so it tends to be, once somebody tries the products, they get it, and they tend to become a loyal customer. So that's a beautiful thing. We just have to now find ways to expose more people to the brand and to the
Yeah, for
products.
sure. Well, it's a wonderful brand. Yes, it's a brand I use. And
Thank
so
you.
maybe we could, since you started talking about, maybe we could go into that a little bit, because I did want to ask you about, because I know how research based, I know that you're very science driven, you're very
Mm,
research based in regards to developing some of these products. Maybe we
mm,
could talk a little bit about like collagen
mm,
specifically. Um, and because I know there are some protocols out there in regards to
mm,
using collagen before training,
mm.
can you talk a little bit about that and why it's
Right,
important?
right. Well, I mean, our bodies are made up of a lot of collagen, everything from our
Mm-hmm.
skin to our bones to our connective tissues, and even our muscles have collagen uh, structures that run through them, kind of like the support trestles of your house, that
Sure.
help gather the force from the muscles and transfer it to the tendons and then to the bones, so you can exercise, so you can move. And so as we age, especially after 30 or 35, collagen synthesis through the body slows down by a percent
Mm-hmm.
or two a year. And that starts to add up as you go through your 30s, through your 40s, through your
For
50s.
sure.
It's one of the reasons these wrinkles start showing up in our 30s, is because
Mm-hmm.
there's less collagen. It's breaking down, but not being remodeled as quickly. And so the skin, or you could visualize your tendons and ligaments, though you can't see them throughout your body. Just like your skin is wrinkling, the connective tissues are becoming a little more brittle, a little stiffer. It's one reason, older people, they wake up in the morning and they feel stiff. There's multiple reasons why that happens, but one of them is the connective tissues become less pliable. And for a hard training athlete, whether it's a runner, the impact on their ankles, knees, and hips, or a climber, the stress on the fingers, elbows, shoulders, connective tissues break down when you train, and they need to be remodeled. And so, the collagen in our bodies is comprised mostly of 3 amino acids: glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. And although your body can make small amounts of those amino acids, and they are contained in certain foods, especially certain meats like pork has a lot of glycine in it, the fact is most people don't eat a lot of meat, certainly not enough to get enough of those amino acids. So that's the beautiful thing about collagen powder, is that the collagen powder is very, very rich in those collagen-specific amino acids. And so when it comes to people wanting to preserve skin, you can take a generic collagen powder, a couple scoops a day, get an extra shot of those amino acids into your system. And there's some studies, they're not the most amazing studies, that show that it can have an impact on skin elasticity, and perhaps slow the wrinkling process a little bit. It's not going to make them go away, that's for sure. So it's not a magic bullet, but it maybe slows the process down and helps you defy the aging process a little bit. When it gets to the connective tissues, there's actually much better research. There's more than a dozen studies that show that if you couple taking collagen powder, especially vitamin C enriched collagen powder, before you exercise, you can target those amino acids to the body parts you're exercising. So in the case of somebody wanting to strengthen their knees or ankles or hips, you would consume 15 grams of collagen powder about an hour before you go run, or an hour before you do your squats, or whatever lower body exercise you're doing. And connective tissues are virtually avascular, unlike muscles that have very rich blood flow to carry amino acids and glucose. The connective tissues have very little blood flow, and they get most of the nutrition through fluid diffusions that occurs when you're exercising. Your connective tissues are surrounded by synovial fluid. The tendons run through sheaths that are filled with synovial fluid. The joints have synovial fluid, and that synovial fluid moves around, and kind of like a sponge, you put a sponge into a bucket of water and squeeze it in and out. Well, in kind of a similar way, when you're exercising, the joints that you're exercising, the fluid is moving in and out of the connective tissues and through the joint, kind of like that sponge. And so to get the amino acids, the glycine, the proline, the hydroxyproline, those collagen-specific amino acids, into the joints, the connective tissues, ligaments and tendons that you're exercising, you need to consume it before you exercise. So you get it into your bloodstream, it's in your body, and then when you're exercising, that fluid diffusion, that sponge effect, is helping transport some of those amino acids, and target them specifically to the joints you're exercising, because the joints that you're not exercising don't have the same amount of fluid moving through them, because they're relatively at rest. And so that's how you can kind of target the amino acids through the training, as long as you consume it before you exercise. If you consume the collagen after you exercise, when you stop moving, well, then there's no fluid diffusion anymore. So the amino acids will still, they'll still circulate around your body and be able to be taken up, but they're more likely to be taken up in the muscles, because after you exercise, the blood flow through the muscles continues at a higher rate for several hours. It's part of that post-exercise blood flow spike that you get. It helps drive recovery. So things that you consume after you exercise are going to go more to the muscles. Things you consume before you exercise are going to be more likely to be absorbed and utilized in the connective tissues, where this fluid diffusion is occurring during exercise. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the science is, collagen powders before you exercise, and then after you exercise, you're better off consuming a high quality whey protein powder or a plant protein powder that has a lot of the branched chain amino acids like leucine and isoleucine and valine, because those are the amino acids that are crucial for muscle protein synthesis to take place, to recover muscles after you exercise. And again, the blood flow is elevated for several hours after you're done running or climbing or whatever your activity of the day is. The blood flow stays elevated to transport glucose and amino acids to the muscles to get that recovery process started. But the connective tissues don't benefit from that blood flow. It's mostly coming from the activity that drives the nutrition. And that's another reason I think for aging athletes, and really for most people, it's important to do a little bit of exercise every day. I mean, it's not only good
I've
for
heard you talk about this.
Yeah, it's not only good mentally to do some exercise every day and good for your metabolism to do that, but to be moving your joints in a way that loads them significantly. I'm not saying you do your 1 rep maxes every day, obviously, but doing some type of physical activity every day is important for nourishing the connective tissues. If you take 3 days off and you just sit at a desk or watch TV, there's not much fluid diffusion going on, which means there's not much nutrition getting to the connective tissues, which means although the body may be trying to heal that achy tendon or remodel your partially broken down connective tissue somewhere in your body, it doesn't get the nourishment unless you're actually loading it. And that's why, knowledgeable physical therapists say, you just don't do physical therapy 1 or 2 days a week. You should be loading the injured body part daily. And in fact, a lot of like post-surgery rehabs are now being done 2 or 3 times a day, very brief. It might be a 10-minute loading period on the injured body part, but it's being done 3 times a day. You get a hip replacement, the days of laying in bed for a week are done. They have you on your feet a couple hours after surgery because you need to reintroduce the loading so that there's a signal for remodeling and strengthening, and again, to get that fluid diffusion to be carrying amino acids. And so there's really a pretty impressive science once you kind of wrap your head around, the reasons for all this and the protocols. And that's why I felt when we launched Physivantage, we're going to develop these products and try to arm people not only with the nutrition, but also the information and the protocols. If you look at our bag of collagen, on the back, it has a drawing and a paragraph describing.
I've read it.
Yeah, describing that you feed connective tissues, then you load connective tissues, then you rest connective tissues, and then you repeat. And that's the process for developing stronger connective tissues. And so our product, Supercharged Collagen, it's distinctly different from the generic collagens out there that you buy off of Amazon, let's say, or you go to Costco and get a collagen powder. I'm not saying those are worthless, but they are just straight up hydrolyzed collagen, which isn't even a complete protein. We supercharge our collagen by adding vitamin C. We add some leucine, which is a amino acid that is a signal for protein synthesis in the body. And we also add some flavoring to make it taste better rather than we make an unflavored collagen that you can mix into coffee or your oatmeal, but we make very delicious, 5 flavored versions of our collagen, which you can shake up or mix into water, and they taste really delicious. And so if you're taking it every single day, you have lots of flavor options. And I don't know that there's any other company out there that has 6 flavor options as we do.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
When it comes to collagen. So that's kind of a nice thing. You might not like all 6, but you're going to find a few flavors that you do like. And there's no added sugar, there's no artificial sweeteners, there's no artificial flavors in any of our products. We use natural sweeteners, things like stevia and monk fruit extract, our products are extremely clean. They're not calorie dense. It's like we're trying to give you straight up protein without all the extra carbs and such in it. And so they're expensive products to make. The price points are they're not the cheapest products on the market, that's for sure, but they are, I think, the best products on the market. So
yeah, they're very, very high quality. So what about, you talked about protein after, which has been, many of us in the athletic world know that's been a thing for a while, but I've recently got into learning more about leucine in particular, and you brought that up. So thoughts on obviously whey protein has a higher threshold of leucine.
Hmm.
So that's probably one of the best. But do you have thoughts on this? Like, do you have to hit a specific leucine
Yes.
threshold every
Yes.
meal?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's actually pretty good research on this. It's
Yeah.
called the leucine trigger. And
Okay.
most of the studies show that it takes at least 2 grams of leucine, maybe if you're a bigger person, 3 grams of leucine, to trigger mTOR, to get that
Yeah.
muscle protein synthesis kind of jump started post workout, or even believe, you consume a 30-gram whey protein shake on a rest day. And so
Mm-hmm.
whey protein is about 10% leucine. So if you have a 30-gram serving, it's going to have 3 grams of leucine, or a 20-gram
Okay.
serving is going to have 2
It's
grams
gonna
of
have
leucine.
two. Yeah.
So even on a rest day or right before bedtime, you have that protein shake and get 2 to 3 grams of leucine. You trigger muscle protein synthesis almost as if you had just done a workout, except
Right.
because workouts turn on mTOR. But
Yep.
getting enough leucine in a single dose turns on mTOR also and starts muscle protein synthesis. So it's very important for athletes to not only turn on mTOR by training, but also you can do it by getting enough protein. And that's one of the valuable things about protein shakes or protein supplements is you know exactly what you're getting, and you can take a significant enough dose at one time to hit that leucine trigger. Whereas and I have nothing against whole food diets.
Right. Of
In
course.
fact, I'm a food first person. I think that's kind of should be the foundation of your nutrition, and then you use protein supplements and such to kind of fill in deficiencies or get you to benchmarks. Like I'm seeking to have 120 grams of protein a day.
Mm-hmm.
I can get about 70 or 80 of that from food, but I need
Food.
protein powders to get me the rest of the
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah. Me too.
yeah, so a lot of the athletes, myself included, aren't. I'm not a vegetarian. I have nothing against meat,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't eat a lot. I have maybe
Sure.
2 or 3 servings of meat a week, not a day, but a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so those servings of meat are protein rich, obviously, and have a lot of leucine. Uh, but I can go 3 days between having a piece of meat, and so I need
Right.
the protein powder to kind of because my other food that I'm eating, whether it's a couple of eggs, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's 15 grams of protein or 16
Right.
grams of
Right.
protein. Or if I have, a bowl of shredded wheat with a cup of skimmed milk, well, that's 9 grams of protein. But
Mm-hmm.
in those little doses, you're not hitting that leucine trigger. You're not getting anywhere close to
Exactly.
it. So those
Exactly.
those meals are still valuable, but they don't have the same impact on recovery and muscle protein synthesis as when you have those bigger doses that come from either like a serving of meat or from a protein shake. And the plant-based athletes, and
Mm-hmm.
I work with a lot of them. One of the
Yeah.
best pro climbers in the world that is one of our athletes, Alex Megos, is a very strict vegan, uh, and so it kind of comes down to a science for him. Like
I'm
spends
sure.
he spends a couple hours a day preparing meals.
Planning.
It's
Yeah.
like way more effort than I could summon,
Yeah.
mentally or time wise. But he wants to
Yeah.
try to get it right with using mostly food. And even in his case, he still needs a scoop or two of protein
I
to
can't
get to around
imagine.
100 grams. And so he uses our Physivantage Powerplex, which is our plant-based protein, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's like any good plant protein. It combines the sources. It's organic pea protein and organic
Okay.
brown rice protein, because individual plant proteins, often don't have good amino acid profiles. They
Right.
might be really high in certain amino acids, but low in others. So you need to combine to kind of build
To get that complete.
to build a nice
Yeah.
spectrum. That's right. And so by combining pea protein and uh, the rice protein, we have put together a product that has a pretty good amino acid spectrum with about 2 grams of leucine.
Mm.
It's never going to be as good as whey protein, because whey
Right.
protein is
Right.
so rich in leucine and branched chain amino acids. But when it comes to plant proteins, it's about the best you can do, because a lot of
Yeah.
proteins, if you go out and buy like a soy powder or like hemp powder is becoming popular, there's these different plant proteins, and they're generally not complete proteins by themselves.
Right.
If you
They don't have that fulvic acid.
unless they're mixed together, unless they're blended
Yep.
together. Just like putting together a vegan meal is the art of combining food types to try to
Exactly.
get yourself some complete proteins, but it's virtually impossible to do it like to get yourself the equivalent of a piece of steak.
Yeah,
A
I
6 ounce
know.
filet mignon has what, 40 grams of protein and a boatload of
Exactly.
amino acids. But
Yeah.
if that's not an option, you got a lot of work to do to
Right.
piece together the vegan diet. And it can be done uh, more easily with the help of protein supplements.
Sure.
But I think most people probably lack the nutritional IQ to put the
Yeah.
foods together, and then the discipline to follow through and get it done on a
Yeah, and
daily
the
basis
energy and
takes so
yes,
much time.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
um, the protein powders for a busy athlete, someone like people that are weekend warriors that have jobs, families,
Yeah.
and then they're trying to train and then, recreate. There's not 3 hours a day to put into preparing meals. And so to be
Exactly.
able to make a collagen shake before you work out and a whey protein shake after you work out or before bed, it takes 2 minutes, and
Yeah,
you
exactly.
solve the problem there. And so for people that can afford the products, they really do save a lot of time. And it's kind of, I view it as an insurance policy, because on any given day, maybe through my whole food diet, I'm going to get close to where I want to be, but I don't want to err.
Yeah.
Especially as an aging athlete or even someone who's just trying to do everything right, you want to err on having a little too much protein in your diet without going over on your calories. And that's another reason, if you're in a strength to weight ratio sport, as climbers are, and also
Yeah.
runners and bikers, if you're fighting gravity in some way, your body mass, your strength to weight ratio is a very important factor. So I don't have the luxury of eating 4,000 calories a day to get my 120 grams of protein. I need to get my
Yeah.
120 grams of protein at 2,000 calories a day. And
Right.
so I'm not
Right.
I'm not eating McDonald's burgers to get there, because I would go way over. So
Right.
again, the protein powders are virtually pure protein. So a 20-gram scoop of weapons grade whey protein is only a little over 100 calories. So it's a
Right.
very
Yeah.
calorie efficient way to get a lot of protein in your diet.
Yeah, I think for most of us, it's a must. It's a must. What would you advise? Let's say someone non-climber, they maybe take walks here and there, not the athlete. Do you have a recommendation on protein for someone like that? Like, do you think protein's still really important for that? Like, they're just trying to optimize aging and optimize their health.
Yes, certainly that person doesn't need the amount of protein a hard training athlete does.
Sure.
Someone who's running 5 or 10 miles a day, or climbing a couple of hours, or mountain biking, on rigorous terrain. That person's a lot harder on their body. There's more, muscle protein and connective tissues being broken down and that need remodeled, that need rebuilt, than
Right,
the
right.
person who's lives a sedentary life. Maybe they go for a walk, maybe they do some mild exercise, which is great, but it's not as impactful on the body. But still, if you're not getting enough protein, I mean, protein helps kind of jumpstart your metabolism. It works for you a little bit
Yes.
on that front. And also, as you age, after age 30, especially after age 40, scientists call it sarcopenia. That's age-related loss
Mm-hmm.
of muscle mass, and along with that is age-related loss of strength and power, and all of
Yes.
those things are going to build up against you as you get older. If you fall at age 70 and break a hip, the statistics are unbelievable in how quickly you will die after that on average.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
to maintain muscle strength and power and agility into middle age and beyond is so important. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet.
Yes.
You can't just
Yes.
make it up on a daily basis and get what you get. You need to be a little more engaged in the process.
Right.
Maybe not to the level that a pro athlete is, but still to to target.
Paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, and there's something out there called the RDA, the recommended daily allowance. And those were,
should we talk about that?
yeah, I mean, those were set over 50 years ago, and they were actually based on, a lot of them were based on mouse studies, not on human studies.
Right.
And they tried to ballpark what is the recommended daily, they called it the recommended daily allowance. The actual correct wording should have been the minimum, the absolute minimum, minimum allowance. And,
to survive.
Right. And so for protein, what that RDA is a half a gram per kilogram of body weight, which I weigh about 75 kilograms. So half a gram per kilogram of body weight would be like 37.5 grams of protein. That's very little. And that's enough to get me by if I'm sitting in this chair all day and laying in bed all night and not doing anything. It's like a subsistence amount. Your body can recycle enough proteins that it can limp by at that, quote, recommended daily allowance. But a lot of people falsely believe that is all they need. And if you're a hard training athlete, you need a lot more than that. You need at the bare minimum 0.7 up to maybe 1 or more grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So for me, I'm shooting for 100 to 120 grams and perhaps even a bit more than that.
Yeah. Do you find, are you trying to get more in, like if you have super hard training days or super hard climbing days, do you try to go for more than what you would normally eat on a daily basis? Yeah,
I do. And actually I want to correct something. I said the units,
go ahead.
I said the units incorrectly there. So I want to have the records,
go ahead.
have the records straightened. I don't
make it clear.
Make it clear. Yeah. It's confusing because you're mixing metric units with English units. But what I meant to say was, the recommended daily allowance was a half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. And what most scientific studies of active people show is required is 0.7 up to 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So
we're on the same page.
Yeah. So for a svelte 110-pound person like yourself, you would be, 70 to 110 grams of protein a day. And
I do shoot for 100.
Yeah. Yes. And so for a bigger person like myself, that 0.7 to 1 per pound of body weight, again, at about 160 pounds, is 100 to 160, something like that. So the 100's the bare minimum for me. And I'm shooting to get more than that on a daily basis. And so that's something that listeners can calculate. Again, it's grams of protein per pound of body weight, not kilograms.
And I throw the little caveat in there. I always say optimal body weight. So whatever your optimal body weight, because, sometimes for people who are trying to drop weight, and then, they might be at 250 pounds. They don't necessarily need 250 grams of protein, but if their optimal body weight is 190, then they would know.
Oh, yes. That's an important distinction to make. And I was speaking kind of more the mindset of an athlete who's already got, who's already got their body comp pretty close, but there are exceptions out there. That person who needs to lose 50 pounds would have a little different numbers. And similarly, if you're someone that is in a sport like, I work with an NFL football player who's also a climber, and he weighs like 300 pounds, and he needs to stay. He's an offensive lineman for the New York Jets.
He needs to
stay at 330. That guy eats so much, and he's eating way more I mean, it's crazy. But again, so things have to be adjusted for special cases. And here's another special case. Is hormones. And we can get out in a whole rabbit hole here, but there's things in our body that determine how effectively we can use amino acids and the proteins we consume to make muscle. Even gut microbiome affects absorption. Not everything you eat makes it into the bloodstream. We're just learning in recent years the role microbiome plays on absorption of different types of nutrients, whether it's vitamins and minerals or whether it's fats or proteins or carbohydrates. So two people, no two people have the same gut microbiome. No two people have the same, thyroid function or hormone levels. People that are higher testosterone are going to be more muscle builders. They're going to be more fast twitch. They're going to have higher protein requirements than somebody who's more slow twitch and maybe has a lower T3 level and a lower test. There's all these other factors that come into play, and that's why I guess I encourage people, and I'm kind of just in the last 10 years become awakened, dare I say woke, to
yeah, dare you say,
in this way, that the importance of knowing what is going on inside of our bodies. For many people, all they understand about their body is like what they see in the mirror and maybe what they see when they step on a scales. And, maybe if they have a blood pressure cuff, they know their blood pressure and heart rate.
Right.
But there's not much more data. In fact, I joke that the average person now has more data about the state of their car. They get in the car and they have, the dashboard is a computer with, tire pressure and when's the oil need changed and, what's the oil temperature and transmission temperature and pressure. And you have all this data on how your car's running, but all you know is like what your body weight is. And so what I'm getting at here is the importance of at least annual blood work. I actually do it quarterly as I become older. Quarterly blood work where I can really run everything, from a metabolic panel to a blood panel, to know red blood cell content, white cell counts, platelet counts, thyroid function, not just TSH, but also getting T3 and reverse T3 and T4. And then testosterone, not just getting total, because that doesn't tell you much. You need free testosterone because that's what really matters. And for women, there's others, obviously. And so at the very latest, age 40, people should start getting annual blood work. And probably even before that to get kind of a baseline. It would be nice to know where you're at age 25, 30, and 35.
Right.
So that when you
especially for hormone levels and
right,
stuff, yes.
To have some type of a baseline heading into middle life gives you a frame of reference and to see how you're tracking. Because not everybody's going to track the same. And, when you get those blood panel results, they give you these very broad ranges of normal. They're so incredibly broad. There are a couple standard deviations. It's crazy. And, in most cases, it's like, oh, you're normal. Well, but you could actually be really low normal, like in the 5th percentile. And the doctor calls you normal, but you don't want to be the 5th percentile on anything, or not many things. Not many things. You don't want to. So, so having that data, tracking it year over year, or at my age, I like to look at it quarterly because I'm, trying to, again, do everything right. In terms of climbing hard, I have a very finite window left. Younger climbers, 20, 30, 40 years old, you have decades left. I don't, so I got to make every season count and, every trip or, red point attempt count. And so I'm trying to do everything right in terms of, I even, in the last few months got a Whoop because one of my problem points that I've identified is sleep. As a business owner, as a very busy person, often, working on a laptop till 10 o'clock at night, shutting my brain off and getting a good night's sleep is really, really hard. And so I'm trying, I need data. I'm data driven. So now the Whoop arms you with some data. It gives you sleep quality. It gives you waking frequency and a number of other things.
Are you finding it's like motivating you to work on the sleep hygiene stuff, or
right?
Like, is it working?
I needed the tool to motivate me. I needed the data. The data to motivate me. I actually hate. I've never been a watch wearer, so it's taking me some getting used to because you need to have it there to sense the data. But it's the data is valuable, and it allows me to kind of develop some correlations. Like definitely being on a computer at 10 o'clock at night is terrible for my sleep.
Good.
I've seen that. Right. Whereas if I shut it down at 7 o'clock, and have, dinner at 7 o'clock and then relax and watch a movie with my wife, that is better for putting me to sleep and having a quality night's sleep.
Surprise.
Surprise. I needed the data to convince me of the obvious, right?
I get it.
And then there's other things that come into play. How hard I train, and like if I'm out climbing hard for 12 hours, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and any listener who exercises hard, I'll fall asleep in a minute,
Oh
and
yeah,
you sleep like a
it's the
baby.
best.
But if I'm kind of at
Yeah,
home and not exercising so hard, and then you have the added stress of work and a lot of things on your mind, then that makes it more
yeah.
challenging. So.
Eric, have you ever heard of yoga nidra?
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Tell me.
I'll send you a yeah. So it's or sometimes it's called non-sleep deep rest and NDSR, but yoga nidra is it's not actually yoga. You're not moving, but I prescribe it to a lot of clients who have difficulty with sleep, and you can just there's there's bunches of apps out there, or you could Google yoga nidra on YouTube, and it takes you through. Usually it's a body scan, but it's right before you go to bed.
Okay.
I started using it a couple of years ago when I wasn't sleeping well, and yeah, it's just it's a relaxation thing, but there's some actual research behind
Mm.
it,
Yeah.
and it can really help you fall into the deeper
Right. Why
cycles of
I
sleep.
do the body scan thing. I've been doing that for
Oh,
decades.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Where I
awesome,
start
yeah.
go through like a little mantra is, my feet feel warm and heavy, and
No,
this
I love
this is
it.
what I found works for me. And I kind of work up from
Sure,
toes to head, and it helps
yeah,
you
yeah,
tap into a deeper state of relaxation. And there's a meditative
exactly.
aspect to it also, because it has you thinking about a body part or your breathing instead of thinking about,
Yes,
I need to do,
whatever's going
yeah,
on.
whatever's going on. And so it sounds
Yeah,
like it's the
yeah.
same kind of thing.
It's
But
super
yeah,
similar.
yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep,
So I
absolutely.
do find that valuable, but sometimes I go through the whole body and then my mind wanders back.
Yeah,
Other times I
still
fall
right.
asleep halfway through my body, and you
Yeah,
know,
which is
it's a
kind of what you
beautiful,
want in
beautiful
that moment
thing. Yeah,
anyway.
that's a
So,
beautiful thing.
yeah, yeah. Have you, real quick, back to the testing, when you've done that testing, because I found it incredibly valuable as well, probably within the last 5 years. Have you been able to take things like results that you get and make immediate shifts, like learning a certain status of something was low, like maybe I always think of vitamin
Well,
D3
I
or
was just
whatever,
gonna
a lot of
say,
times
I was
people
gonna
find
say
that way.
the
Okay,
D was
yeah,
the D is one of the big ones for
it's a
sure.
biggie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So about, I guess it was maybe 5 years ago, when I had never had, I had been getting blood work for like the last decade, but I had never done
sure.
vitamin D.
Oh,
But then it was probably a year before COVID, maybe, or
mm-hmm.
so, that I thought I'm going to do vitamin D. I'm kind of curious because I had read,
Yeah,
obviously vitamin D status is important when it comes to cancer. There's, if you're low in vitamin D, you have a higher cancer risk, at least
right.
certain cancers, but also like you're more likely to experience long COVID if you're vitamin D deficient.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
vitamin D, it's a steroid hormone. It plays, as an older athlete, my testosterone was drifting down every year, like every guy,
Right.
when they're in their 40s,
Yeah.
50s, your testosterone's drifting lower and lower, each year, and vitamin D status affects that. And so, in any case, long story short, is my vitamin D status was terrible. When I had it tested,
Oh.
I was out of the low end of the range. I was
Oh,
like,
you were low.
the range you're supposed to be like between 35 and 75 or something like that, and I was like 15. So I started taking 5,000 IU's a day,
Yeah.
and in 6 months I went from a 15 to like a 45. So I got into
That's
at least the
awesome.
low end of the normal range, and then after another 6 months I got up into the 50s, which is solid middle
Right.
range. And then I cut back my vitamin D dose a bit, but I still take it daily.
Hmm.
And so seeing that come up in the blood results was beautiful. But the other beautiful thing is my testosterone
Hmm.
levels went up 50 or 70 points. My total and free
Yeah.
both drifted back in the higher
That's
direction, which is a
awesome.
beautiful thing for an older guy to see that
Right.
movement. So the
Right.
vitamin D was a beautiful thing. And again, all the other benefits in terms of health and longevity and anti-cancer properties, and for women and men, bone health, vitamin D is very important.
That's
And
what I was thinking about too.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and along with that, zinc is very important. with Physivantage, we just came out with a product called Vitalium, which basically
Yeah.
it's a multivitamin, but we leave out all the stuff everybody's getting enough of, like vitamin C
which is
and a
awesome.
lot of the B complexes. You're getting enough of those in your grains and your various foods, cereals, whatnot. But the ones that you are likely deficient on, that epidemiological studies show that most people are deficient on, D, A, zinc, selenium, iodine.
Copper?
We don't have copper, but I'm a
No?
big believer in copper.
You are? Okay.
I take a copper supplement separate. We did not put it in to the Vitalium, and a few other things. There's 10 micronutrients that are the ones that people are most likely deficient of. So it's kind of, again, it's an insurance policy. I'm not saying everybody needs to take the daily Vitalium, but rather than some generic tablet from Walgreens or GNC, or that is most of those multivitamins are hard pressed tablets filled with binders.
Yeah, they're not
They don't dissolve very well in your stomach.
Right.
There are a lot of chemicals. They're artificially produced vitamins. And ours is a capsule which will dissolve in your belly in a minute or two. It'd be highly bioavailable, and it's got, again, not everything, but the ones that you need most to kind of have that insurance policy. And that product just came out in January. It was I had two medical doctors that helped me. One of them a functional medicine specialist, Dr. Thomas Cunningham, and the other is a naturopathic Dr. Elena Zinkoff. She's a female hormone specialist. And so I had both of those physicians participate in designing this product. So while it was kind of my idea to put a supplement like this together that would kind of hit all the the missing things in many people's diets, commonly deficient micronutrients, I went to the experts for their input and recommendations on what should be included and combined. And so I believe it's a super high quality product. Again, I'm not saying everybody needs it, but if you're someone that wants that insurance policy on all of those critical micronutrients, it's like 50 cents a day, so it's a pretty good investment.
Yeah, for sure. Can I, before I have to let you go, can we quick talk a little bit about just training in general, kind of moving from nutrition to training itself, and specifically maybe for as those of us who are aging and still really wanting to perform at our best, do you have thoughts on things like basically where to spend our time? So, should we be lifting heavy? And you could speak specifically to climbing, because I think we could take some generalities from it. But what should we do in like all our energy systems? Should we be doing aerobic stuff? Should we? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is a topic that really, to do it right, demands a lot of nuance. We could do a whole podcast together, you and I, on this topic. And so, like, if someone's not really committed to a specific sport, they're just more into health and wellness and longevity. I think they want to do a combination of everything. You want to do aerobic activity a few days a week. You want to lift weights 2 or 3 days a week. There's benefit to bearing heavy loads in terms of triggering stronger bones and, again, loading the connective tissues. But there's value for cardio, obviously. Most people should be doing more cardio in terms of remodeling their heart and, for their circulation and endothelial function. And, there's a lot of benefits there. And then some mobility work. The more mobile you are, the more efficient you can move around and feel better. Kind of there should be a multifaceted approach. I'm kind of against, I guess, a single modality training for somebody. If they just are runners or they just ride their bike 3 days a week, hey, that's better than nothing. But in addition to riding your bike 3 days a week, you should lift some weights a couple of days a week as well. Now, if you're an avid athlete, whether it's skiing or climbing or mountain biking or running races on weekends, 10K races, your training needs to be more sport specific. And so, like that person who's running races, well, you're going to do a lot of base cardio training, that zone 2. You're going to do several hours of that a week, but then you need to do 1 or 2 speed workouts a week, small dose, like kind of an 80-20 split, 80% kind of the zone 2, and then 10 or 20% of the speed work, Tabatas or sprint intervals or, running at race pace for 10 or 20 minutes. If you're a climber, well, you need to climb a lot. You need to do things that are sport specific. You need to, hangboard train. If you're not bouldering, you want to hangboard train. You need to load your fingers frequently, several days a week. Train your climbing muscles, but also for injury prevention and just all around fitness, you want to train your antagonists as well. So that means doing pushing exercises. So while I'm not an advocate of climbers doing bodybuilding programs or heavy duty weightlifting programs, they should lift a little bit of weight around, doing some bench press, some shoulder press, doing some, shoulder exercises, whether it's rotator cuff, external, internal extension, or doing some sling trainer exercises, Y's, I's, and T's, doing a little bit of deadlifting, perhaps, if you can do it with proper form. I think climbers should dabble in that, but the bulk of their training, again, 80 or 90% of it should be climbing related, again, of varying intensity. Maybe one workout is a bouldering workout that's more high intensity in nature and more strength power oriented. But then the next day, maybe they're out at the crags or at the climbing gym doing a lot of sub-maximal mileage. My wife and I went to a climbing gym on a Wednesday in Philadelphia where they have these 60-foot overhanging lead walls, and we just climbed 5.9s, 5.10s, 5.11s. Awesome. It was all sub-maximal, but we did 700 feet of climbing. So it was a really good aerobic workout over the course of a few hours. And it's climbing specific aerobic training. So it's not like going for a run. It's like going for a run with your forearms. So, there's some value in that, but also, tomorrow I'm going to do a little bit of a bouldering workout, and it's more strength power oriented. And so no matter what your sport is, you need to figure out and research and schedule workouts that do train, ideally, the different energy systems on separate workouts. You want to separate those out and kind of have a focus of the day or a mission of the day. Is it lower intensity, more volume oriented, or is it high intensity, just in brief spurts? And then again, broaden things out. I think climbers should do a little bit of generalized aerobic activity. Like I run a few days a week, maybe 10 to 15 miles in total for a week. So I'm not out training for a marathon. That would be counterproductive. That's a good amount. But it's a decent amount. It's good for calories. It's good for my heart, cardiovascular. Yeah. And there's evidence that, climbers with stronger hearts and better generalized conditioning actually recover faster between boulders, between routes. And when you're up on a route trying to shake out and recover, well, your heart's driving the recovery. So the more blood you can push through your body, through your forearms with each beat of the heart, the faster you recover. And the way you increase the stroke volume of the heart is by doing cardiovascular activity. So climbers don't need to run a ton, but they actually should be doing a little bit of cardiovascular exercise year round to have a strong, healthy heart to support their climbing activity. So keep it sport specific for the most part. Do a little bit of generalized training to fill in the voids, and even on your days that are rest days, get out of the house. Like I will go out and do a business phone call as I walk around the block, and I'll get a 2-mile walk in the sunshine while I'm doing a business phone call or listening to a podcast, or I think especially as you get older, you need to do something active every day. A body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest. And so I think that really does apply when we get older, is you want to do something every day that gets your heart rate up, gets your breathing rate up. Maybe not necessarily breaks a sweat, not that you have to go that hard, but
it doesn't have to be intense.
It doesn't have to be intense, but just you need to move. And again, it's good for your mind, it's good for your body, and if you're outside, it's good for your soul, I believe. So
I agree. Yes. Okay. Can I ask you I had a couple of questions from the community that I had thrown out there that they could ask me. So can I give these to you? So the first one was super general. Best opinion to lose weight. Someone who wants to lose weight. Best opinion on that.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to sound cliche, but cut carbs. and the carbs you cut first are things like beer, and
alcohol.
Alcohol for sure. Those refined foods, and I am someone, and this is my German heritage, I love pastries. Like a coffee and a pastry is like a beautiful thing to me, and I could have that every morning. And at times in my life, I did have that every morning, and I would see my weight start to go up on the scales. It's just,
Sure.
you just can't
Yeah.
have a Fosknot every day, or a couple of
Right.
Dunkin' Donuts, or, once a month, absolutely. Maybe even once a week
Yeah.
if you're exercising, but
Right.
a daily basis, the pastries are deadly, and so is the beer. I started drinking Athletic Brewing, the near beer, about
Oh,
6 months
yeah.
ago, and
Yeah.
it's made a difference because I've cut out
Good.
a few thousand calories. I'm not a big beer
Yeah.
drinker, but it's saved me a few thousand
Well,
calories a
it can
month.
add up. Yeah.
It does add
Yeah.
up, you bet. And
Yeah.
so carbs, alcohol, processed foods, get rid of those. Fast food has really no place in the diet, except for like if I'm driving from Pennsylvania to Wyoming, I'm probably going to stop at a McDonald's just because
Are you?
I'm on
I
the,
love knowing this.
yeah, yeah, I admit it. When we travel long
Yeah, I love it.
distances and we need I want to keep the wheels rolling, so I don't want to sit down at a
Yes, I
restaurant.
get it. I
It's
get
like we
it.
got to go
Yeah.
2,000 miles to Wyoming. It's like you're not going to get there by
Yeah.
sitting at a restaurant. So
That's right.
stop at McDonald's and get a quarter pounder. Okay, this is the one
I
time,
love it.
the,
I
the
love
one
it.
time this summer I'll do
Yes.
that. And but if it's
Yes.
if it's a
Yeah.
daily or even a weekly thing, that's probably counterproductive. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, next question, a little bit on recovery. Any hack? This was a question. Any hacks on recovery? Sauna, arm aid, and then it went ...
Yeah, well, I do. I've had an arm aid for a decade, so I use that on
Me too.
trigger points. I do foam rolling pretty much every morning and every evening. I
Oh,
do
wow.
5 or 10 minutes of foam rolling and stretching. Just as an older person, and I'm kind of genetically a tight person. I've always had tight hamstrings,
Mm,
tight hip flexors. Sitting at a
mhm.
computer doesn't help that. Sitting in a car doesn't help
Sure.
that. That's for sure. And so I need to take countermeasures on a daily basis. And I do have a sauna in my garage that I use a few days a week.
Oh,
I
cool.
wish I could use it
You
more
do.
often, but I got to remember to turn it on. It's got to heat up for half an hour. It's an
Right.
infrared sauna. It's got to heat up, and then I got to go out there. And so
Yeah, it's a
I would
process.
like to do it daily, but it's more like 3 times a week. And so
Got it.
I,
But so you're a believer in
I
the
am.
sauna.
I think my biggest recovery protocol thing is just getting enough protein. I have a protein
Yeah,
shake
that sure.
the last thing in my stomach before I brush my teeth and go to bed is a protein shake. And the first thing in my stomach, even before coffee in the morning, is a protein
Yep.
shake. So I
Yep.
bookmark or bookend the day with a 25-gram dose of weapons grade whey protein. And that
Yeah.
way I am in a good position. Because, all night you're fasting,
Well,
you're,
I was gonna say, have you seen some of that research coming out about probably the importance of getting that bolus in the morning because why can't I think of the word? Catabolic
catabolic.
during the
That's
night.
right. And I'll tell you,
And so
and
yeah, and
yeah,
so instead of fasting
I'm
in the morning, probably
I'm
not a good
I'm
idea.
all about that. And I'll tell you, Heather, I was someone who
Yeah.
actually in my 40s into my early
Mm-hmm.
50s was
Mm-hmm.
really doing the intermittent fasting thing.
Me too.
You
And it
know,
wrecked my thyroid.
yeah,
But
yep.
anyway.
I think that's part of my thyroid function too. Is that
Mm-hmm.
if you're 16 hours without eating any calories,
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I understand there's potential health benefits to fasting, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
once every few months you want to do a couple of day fast. Perhaps there's health
Mm-hmm.
benefits to that, but for a serious athlete, it's just
Yeah, no
it was a
way.
total
Yeah,
bad
I
move.
screwed up big time.
Yep,
Yep.
big, and I'm
Me
willing to
too.
admit when
Me
I'm
too.
wrong, and it's good. You and I
Same.
see it the same
Same.
way, and so so instead of waking up and drinking coffee and then not eating until like
Yes.
2 or 3 in the afternoon, I
Right. That
wake
was
up,
me.
minutes, I have 25 grams of high
Yep.
quality
Yep.
protein in my system. And that is so good
Love it.
on a few different levels, on hormone function and just, muscle
Yes.
recovery. And now I don't eat a big breakfast. I'm not
Yeah, I don't either,
because I'm
but
not having that
yeah, I get
pastry
that
in the
protein.
morning that I would enjoy. I'm not having that. I'm literally having a couple of cups of coffee. I'm having that protein
Mm-hmm.
shake. I usually break off a small, like 1 inch square of dark chocolate that I have
Oh,
with my
nice.
coffee because the dark chocolate,
Oh,
speaking of
perfect.
copper, the dark chocolate has
Yeah,
copper in it.
right.
And so,
Yeah, good
so a little
magnesium
bit
in
of
there too.
copper, like 50 grams, a little bit of chocolate, 50 grams of dark chocolate. That's kind of my breakfast along with the protein and the coffee. And then
Yeah.
late morning, midday after my first workout, then I have like a small meal. It could be a couple of eggs. It
Mm-hmm.
could be some shredded wheat cereal with a banana on it or something like that. But,
Mm-hmm.
I start the day with that protein, and Not a big fan of the fasting thing anymore.
Yeah, no, me either. I know we live and learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it goes. So anything, I want to respect your time. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but I want to respect your time. Anything else that you would like to touch on that we missed?
Uh, Not really. I think we covered a lot of territory.
We
You
did.
know,
Broad, which is good.
yeah. I mean, that pretty much covers it. I guess the final thing I would say is just reiterate. I mentioned about the importance of blood work. I think it's also very important to get a physical annually. I think anybody over age of 40, you should have an annual physical. I was lucky that back. I'm long since retired, but I had a university
Yeah.
job for many years and have good health insurance that will pay for an annual physical where I can go in and have a doctor, work me over, and I can get my colonoscopy every decade, and just being proactive. I mean,
Yeah.
when you age, bad things happen. I mean, yeah, you can go out and get hit by a car, but you can also drop over dead from a heart attack. And sometimes very fit
Exactly.
people drop over dead from
I
a heart
know.
attack. So just because we look fit doesn't mean, that we don't have blockage somewhere,
Yeah.
and
Very true.
so to be proactive, I just a few months ago got there's a type of CAT scan. It's a calcium scan. Are
I've
you
heard of
familiar
it.
with that for your
Yep.
arteries? And it gives you a
Yep.
score. And based on that score, it's actually a very good marker of your cardiovascular risk, better than looking at blood lipids, which cholesterol and blood lipids
Yeah.
are there's a lot of doctors that are skeptical of the value of like cholesterol levels, for instance.
Exactly.
If
Yes.
there's a special blood test called ApoB that is perhaps more meaningful, and also this calcium artery scan is quite
Yeah.
meaningful. And so I think that's something I'm going to do perhaps annually or every other year going forward, just to again to
Mhm.
track where I'm at on those scores, and the annual physical and the quarterly blood work. And the quarterly blood work I pay out of pocket
I do too.
probably cost me about a
Yeah, I
thousand.
know.
I'm putting so much
It's
time
worth
and
the
effort
investment.
into being an athlete, a master's athlete,
Yep.
and uh, that the $1,000 a year for the extra blood work is worth it to kind of.
I always think of when we're like, if we're paying out of pocket for that stuff, it is such an investment in our future health. And
Yeah.
what we would pay if we're not doing those things, what we might have to pay in medical costs
Mhm.
anyway. So I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah. So
absolutely
I
worth the
guess my
investment.
final word would be like to be proactive with your health, not just with the
Love
workouts.
it.
Some people are really good at motivating themselves in the workout, but they're really bad at motivating themselves to get to a doctor. And, if there's something you're worried about, just go to the doctor and end the worry, and get it checked out. Women
Exactly.
have their
Yep.
own issues that they need to stay after, like
Yep.
mammograms and things like that.
Yep.
And for men, it's like a prostate examination and knowing
Exactly.
what your PSA is on an annual basis.
Yes.
That is a number you probably want to track, over time as you're aging. And so, and even when it comes to those sports specific injuries, be proactive on those too. When you're younger as an athlete, you develop an ache or a pain or a um, tendonitis type thing. It's when you're 20 or 30, it's like, oh, I'm going to just continue on and climb through it and ignore it. But as you become older,
Right.
it's actually a lot smarter just to deal with it as soon as you can. Take the countermeasures, remove the provoking exercise. If there's anything, a
Yes.
medical intervention that you can do, or rehab intervention, the sooner you get with the program on that, you can get through that hurdle and get back, as opposed to if you kind of ignore it. These things, especially tendinopathies, can become
Hmm.
real buggers that can linger for years and take you
Yep.
out of the game. And so, again, even on those sports injuries, being proactive, I think, is a very good thing. And
I
so.
like that message, the being very proactive
Mhm.
health and yeah, staying involved in your own health and advocating for it.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So at least try to have as much data as you have on your car. I mean,
I like that. I like that. Yes, that would be helpful for all of us
yeah.
for sure. Well, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? There is a link always in my
Hmm.
episode notes below the episode for Physivantage, and there's a discount code for 15% off anyone who's interested in those products. Anywhere else people can follow you, just
Right.
to
Yes.
get
Well,
training tips,
yeah.
things like that.
Yep. You bet. Well, on Instagram, I'm Eric_Hörst on Instagram. And then we have at Physivantage on Instagram. And there's also, for the climbers listening in, there's a Training for Climbing Instagram account where we post a lot of tips and training such. My training website is trainingforclimbing.com. If you Google anything training oriented, it should come up
Yeah,
number one
it
because I've
comes
been
up.
around forever. Like
Yes,
24 years, on the web. So I have pretty killer SEO for my Training for Climbing website.
that's
And
right.
then
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the nutrition, it's physivantage.com. Fizzy, not Fizzy, but
PH.
Fizzy as in physical advantage. That's kind of
Yes,
what the name
yes.
stands for, is you get a physical advantage with Physivantage. So it's PHYSI
Love it.
Vantage.com. And again, if you put in a link and then
Yeah, it's
mention
in
the
there.
coupon code, people can get a discount on their purchase and hopefully,
I
enjoy
will
some
do it.
good, high
High
quality
quality
nutrition.
supplement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And you have the podcast,
Yeah, and I
Training for
do a
Climbing
monthly a
podcast.
monthly Training for Climbing podcast. It's kind of
Mhm.
more. It's not so much guest driven.
Mhm. Yeah, but it's
I may
you
do
giving
more of that in the future, but it's typically more Coach Hurst putting on his professor's cap and giving a
Yeah, that's great.
1 hour lecture on a topic, whether it's energy system training for climbing
Yeah.
or whatever the
It's
topic
extremely informative.
du
I highly
jour is.
recommend it. It's great. Yeah.
It can be pretty intense. I know people that are really into training, and a lot of coaches listen to it and learn a lot.
Yeah.
For a newbie just getting into the sport, it's probably TMI. So
Yeah, yeah, which that's fine.
yeah,
That's fine.
yeah,
So, okay. Well, thanks again for being here. And obviously, I'd love to do it again. I'm thinking, I mean, I didn't even get to, I'm not joking, like three-quarters of my questions.
yeah,
So maybe we can do it again another time. And hopefully, we'll run into each
yeah.
other on your seasonal climbing trip
Yep,
this
yeah.
summer. So,
We'll be out in Wyoming in July at some point. So
yeah,
hopefully
sounds
cross
good. We
paths.
will be there
Yeah.
at some point too.
Yeah, well, it's
So,
always good to see you
okay.
out there, and congrats on your developing career here as a
Yeah,
coach and
thanks. It's
mentor.
fun.
And
Something new.
yeah, good
Yeah.
for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're an
Thanks.
inspirational person. I
Appreciate
mean,
it.
to anybody who's not met you in
Oh,
person,
thanks,
that
Eric.
you're a delightful, positive, energetic, person. And so
Thank you.
I love hanging
Appreciate
out with
that.
people like you guys and stuff.
Ah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate that
Mhm.
very much. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Great to see you. Happy birthday week.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheynen.com. Heinen is spelled Heynen, and there you will find links to my online courses, how I work with clients one-on-one as well as online with my coaching and counseling services that I offer. The information in this podcast is intended to provide a broad understanding and knowledge of healthcare topics. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be considered complete and should not be used in place of advice from your physician or healthcare provider. We recommend you consult your physician or healthcare professional before beginning or altering your personal exercise, diet, or supplementation program.